I want to thank everyone for coming to this debate and on the dropping of the atomic bomb. I am Tyler and this is Lincoln. To start this debate, I'd like to say a quote from a Japanese soldier landing in Busan. The bodies of thousands of soldiers were piled up in a jumble, just like bluefin tuna in a market. Would you put more people through this just to avoid the bombs?
Hello and thank you, B-Reactor. I am Kano and here beside me is Conrad. We are here today to ask one question. Should the atomic bomb have been dropped? And hopefully by the end, we can help you know that the answer is no, it shouldn't have.
The first point I want to bring up is the Japanese invasion of China. It was cruel and inhumane, which is why we should have dropped the bomb. Women were the main victims. 20,000 to 80,000 women were sexually assaulted and experienced the cruelties and cold-blooded murder of the Japanese.
The rape of a Nanking was a horrible event, yes, but it does not justify the dropping of the atomic bomb. The victims of the atomic bomb in no way had any participation in the rape of Nanking. So why is it justified to drop the atomic bomb on them?
The cost of US today, because of the cleanup, would have costed $2 billion a year. From the article of Seattle Times, it states 42 workers exposed to radiation after 6 months of nuclear production. After most polluted nuclear productions, it would have cost the federal treasury $2 billion a year. For the causes of nuclear production and pollution of camphor, it would have affected workers with radiation and cost the federal treasury billions of money to clean up the waste.
Even though the Hanford site is highly polluted, plutonium is used for multiple things, such as plutonium provides an electrical power on space probes and space vehicles. This property makes plutonium a good choice for certain thermoelectric generator applications. They have also used in artificial pacemakers for people with heart conditions. This evidence came from a source called Chemistry Explained.
On the CIA's website, it talks about Operation Downfall. A part of this would have been Operation Pastel, a deception plan that was going to trick the Japanese into thinking that we were going to blockade them. And while we were invading them, ships with AA guns would have been stationed at the invasion points to minimize the casualties.
I understand how you think that the casualty numbers would have been lower by a different plan of attack. However, the Japanese wouldn't have stopped fighting, for example. I was one of a small group of scientists and engineers interrogating an intelligent, well-informed Japanese army officer in Yokohama. He replied, "We would have kept on fighting until all Japanese were killed, but we would not have been defeated." This information was gathered by a source called If the Atomic Bomb Had Not Been Used.
And the next point is, I want to bring up the Japanese mentality, death before dishonor. They would never have surrendered. Even after the war, millions of former Japanese soldiers took to guerrilla warfare in the mountains. It would take 10 years to master the situation.
The Japanese would have surrendered if they worshipped and kept their emperor. According to Quora, it states, removing Hirohito from his position will not be taken lightly by Japan. And the Allies knew this. This means that he wasn't despised by his people, on the contrary.
To conclude this debate, I, Lincoln, and Tyler have come to a conclusion that the U.S. should have dropped the bomb, and I hope that we convinced you that they should have too.
Thank you for listening to myself, Conrad, and my partner Connor about a debate on not dropping the atomic bomb for multiple reasons, including radiation exposure and cost of cleanup.
Thank you all for coming. I'm
to thank everyone for attending. I'm Celeste, this is my partner Maria. We believe that the bomb shouldn't have been dropped, because by dropping the bomb it caused the death of many women, children, men, and infants. Today we are here to prove that the bomb shouldn't have been dropped.
By dropping the bomb, the U.S. saved so many more people. Operation Downfall would have caused many more deaths. The nuclear bomb was actually saved more lives than it took. Despite radiation poisoning, the bomb was a better decision to be on millions of lives.
According to the article, how many people were killed during World War II, making and dropping the bombs was not a smart thing to do because it affected people. There were 800,000 people that were killed, and some of those people were victims. They didn't deserve to die.
President Truman claimed that the bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki was going to be dropped on a military base. However, the bomb was dropped on a civilian place. According to the article Truman Hiroshima, a military base, Truman falsely claimed that the world will know that the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a military base.
The Japanese were willing to sacrifice women and children for the war. The main message of the glorious death of 100 million campaigning was that it was glorious to die for the God or Emperor of Japan. Every single man, woman, and child would have died for the Emperor when the Americans arrived. This is showing that if America were to have invaded, the battle would have been so much more brutal, and even children would be fighting.
According to Brookings.edu, the cost to build the bombs was a lot. They spent $76 million. So why spend a lot of money to hurt innocent people? The USA could have prevented a lot of deaths by not dropping the bombs.
I understand that there were still many deaths, but don't you think that spending money on something that would kill way less people and save many lives is worth it? The United States still had compassion for the Japanese citizens. Operation Downfall would have caused more death. Operation Downfall was the planned invasion of Japan, and those who have argued in favor of dropping the atoms bombs believe that the invasion would have caused more casualties. In a speech to the British House of Commons on August 1845, opposition leader Winston Churchill said, "There are voices which assert that the bomb should never have been used at all. I cannot associate myself with such ideas. I am surprised that very worthy people, that in most cases have no intention of proceeding to the Japanese themselves. In fact, a study was done for security of war by Henry Simmons Saff and William Shockley estimated that conquering Japan would cost 1.74 million American casualties, including 80,000 to 400,000 fatalities and 5 to 10 million Japanese lives."
I see your point on how Operation Downfall would have caused a lot of deaths. However, building and dropping the bomb also had a cost of lives from Japanese and Americans. And not only did it cost lives, but it is still affecting lives of people today because of the waste that was left from the bomb. According to the video, Was It Right to Bomb Hiroshima, there is still 53 million gallons of nuclear waste left in Hanford.
So overall, Rana and I can agree that the nuclear bomb was never initially meant to start any more violence. The goal of the United States has almost always been to keep our freedom and peace. Dropping something so dangerous was meant to end war.
I still think that dropping the two bombs was a bad idea because people got hurt, people lost their places, and there were people lost their lives.
Okay. Hello, and thank you all for coming to hear our debate. I am Anthony, and this is my partner Benjamin, and we both believe that dropping the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima was the best method to end the war.
Hello, thank you for being at our debate and spending your time here. And my name is Sarah Caston. Right next to me is Riley, and right next to Riley is Luke, and we believe that the bomb should not have been dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki because there were hundreds of thousands of deaths in the cities, and it was not the best way to end the war.
The pro side first point is the Einstein-Slizar letter to FDR asked him, and I quote, to speed up the experimental work which is at present being carried on within the limits and budgets of university laboratories. End quote. As you can see, Einstein, is asking FDR to speed up the production of uranium and developmental science of the bomb.
Yes, a letter to FDR was made by Einstein and Slizar, but he only said to make the bomb and to never drop it. This was because many scientific improvements were made with nuclear power that we still use today.
Another addition to the inhumane truth of this war is the fact that many try to cover up all the hundreds of people that died, did so in unimaginably horrific ways. Some skulls cracked and their brains slid out, others their skin fell off their body. It wasn't just the blackened corpses of adults. All those children, lifeless, in the middle of school.
It is true, and I agree with you that many of them went through a scarring past because of the bombs, but if we didn't drop the bombs, then more would have died because of Operation Downfall. Operation Downfall was a plan to send all the soldiers into the mainland of Japan and invade it and kill everyone there. It was over 10 million people, both Japanese and American, would have been killed, even more than what the bombs killed.
Thank you, Anthony, for your point. Our next theme is psychological effects from the bombs. I'm going to be talking about the test bomb. An article by CBS News that was written in 2012 says, the test bombs in the state of New Mexico affected the 30,000 people living in the area. They had developed rare forms of cancer and they developed depression.
Yes, they developed depression, but where else could we have launched them? Should we have launched them near here in Washington where the forests are and contaminated our forest, or near a river lake contaminated our water supplies and killed even more that way? They've developed depression, but if we dropped them somewhere else, more could have died.
Thank you, Anthony. Our next point is on how the bomb ended the war faster. Dropping the nuclear bomb caused the 5-year-long Second World War to end, and with Japan surrendering after the nuclear bombs were dropped on 2 unbombed areas to show their raw power and destruction of bombs. This allowed millions of American soldiers and Japanese soldiers to live, and when they surrendered, we helped them rebuild, giving them Toyota, Sony, and more companies. Not only did it stimulate economy, but it allowed countless war criminals to be caught for rape, mass killings of up to 100,000 people, attacking neutral powers, and more.
Although great outcomes, for the most part, were made, many troubles still remained. While many soldiers lived, their living conditions weren't ideal. Cancers embedded themselves into bloodlines and genetics. Mental disorders spread, pushing many to suicide, and disaster areas were still left desolated.
In conclusion, Anthony and I believe that dropping the nuclear bomb onto Nagasaki and Hiroshima was the right choice, and it helped save millions of lives.
In conclusion, lives were lost in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The atomic bombs caused people's mental health to suffer and forms of cancer to embed themselves into bloodlines. In conclusion as well, Sarah, Riley, and I still believe that the atomic bombs should not have been dropped on the cities.
bomb side, and we believe that the bomb was beneficial for both sides.
Welcome everyone, my name is Sarah and this is my partner Helen and we are anti-bomb. We believe that not dropping the bomb would have been the better decision.
Our first point is that it ended the war very swiftly. From the first bomb to the surrender of Japan, it took a total of 9 days. On August 6th, we dropped Little Boy. We then gave Japan 3 days to surrender, and they did not. The United States dropped Fat Man on August 9th, and Japan finally surrendered on August 15th.
Thank you for that point, but the U.S. could have used a totally different method to end the war. We could have firebombed the cities we used the atomic bomb on. Using the atomic bomb not only made tremendous waste and destroyed their land, it destroyed the U.S. as well. According to the site Nuclear Secrecy, there was many things we could have done alternatively, like I said, firebombing or demonstration power.
Thank you for that point. We would also like to bring up that after 73 years, we are still trying to clean up all the nuclear waste. There are 53 to 58 million gallons of nuclear waste at Hanford alone. According to Time.com, in 1953, we dumped our nuclear waste into the environment, causing 200 square miles of groundwater that is radioactive.
Yes, that is true, but the fact is the government had to decide it was either waste or tens of thousands of lives. Yes, there's a lot of waste, but to compare it to the lives of Americans and Japanese, it would have been lost due to a long war. Selfish. It's unfair to be overly critical of people in the early days of the manufacturing of atomic bombs. People were losing their brothers, husbands, cousins, and other family members, and were willing to pay whatever price was needed to save their families. There were many things at the time that scientists and engineers were unaware of, and as time has progressed, we are coming to a better knowledge and understanding of the environmental dangers associated with nuclear waste.
We would also like to bring up that the founder of the nuclear chain reaction, Sillard, never intended the nuclear power to be used in a war manner. He even created petitions to make sure that the atomic bombs were never used again.
A good point, but you must also remember that discoveries and inventions are often used in a manner that was different than what the originator wanted or desired. As an example, people use prescription drugs to heal, while others use them to kill. That doesn't make prescription drugs a bad thing, though. All things can be used for good or evil.
Thank you, Josh. We would also like to bring up that it ended the war with the least American and Japanese deaths, as the next option, other than atomic bombs, was Operation Downfall. Operation Downfall was the plan of island hopping and invading Japan. It was estimated by personnel of the Navy Department that there would be between 1.7 to 4 million American casualties and 400,000 to 800,000 deaths. The same department estimated that there would be up to 10 million Japanese casualties.
That's a good point, but predictions aren't always correct. Even if the prediction was correct, we could have dropped the bomb somewhere else. The U.S. could have shown the Japanese what the Trinity test did to show the kind of damage the bomb could cause.
In summary, we believe that dropping the bomb was very beneficial, not just for the Americans, but also for the Japanese, and ended the war extremely quickly. I would like to thank everyone for listening to the debate.
In conclusion, we, the opposition team, believe that the bomb was unneeded because we could have shown the Trinity test of the U.S.'s power instead of destroying Japanese land and the U.S.'s. Lastly, I would like to thank you all for listening to the debate. That could have gone a lot better.
Hello, my name is Daniel, and today I'm going to be talking about why we should drop the bomb.
Good day, everyone. And the opposing team, this is my partner Sams. We the compound that is necessary to drop the bomb. So as the bomb dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Together, it killed around 200,000 Japanese. And for those survivors still alive, they still die of sickness. And for radiation exposure, few people die from it.
The Sizzlard letter was made by a physicist named Neil Sizzlard because he didn't think the bomb was necessary. This was signed by 100 other scientists and got sent to the president, who agreed to this, but the bomb still got dropped because of Pearl Harbor.
Well, we need to drop the bomb because the Japanese would rather die than give up because the Japanese way is Ketsu-go, which means death before dishonor.
Well, people have to waste 177 million tank, which cost $2 billion because of people clean the tank in Hanford. And it will continue to waste billions of dollars and look at for the next 50 years.
Well, according to NBC News, there's only been 3 deaths involving radiation, and there's been a lot more deaths with construction.
Yeah, okay, I get your statement, but we could have invaded them and okay, but according to NBC News, a athlete ended up getting radiation sickness when he inhaled some odd odor in the air, and now he's on heavy medication and still is.
Well, in my conclusion, we believe that the bomb was necessary because if we didn't drop the bomb, we would have had a lot more deaths or lost the war.
In conclusion, the U.S. should never have dropped the bomb, atomic bomb, because it killed around 2,000 innocent people. And most scientists quit the job for it. Also, it was very expensive to build the atomic bomb. Additionally, we have wasted 56 million liquid, which can for damage the environment. Thanks everyone for being here. Watch us. Thank you.
Good morning, audience, judges, and opposing team. For today's topic, we will be discussing if was it necessary to drop the bomb. We think it was necessary.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. My name is Armando, and my brother is Daniel, and for today's topic, we are defending that it wasn't necessary to drop the bomb.
Our first point that we would like to make is more people would have died if we had done Operation Downfall. The estimated people who would have died if we did Operation Downfall would be 1.7 through 4 million. This shows that dropping the bomb was necessary. My source is history.com.
I see your point. However, the Hiroshima bomb was not aimed at military bases. Instead, it was aimed at defenseless Japanese. As stated on FFF.org, the victims, mostly children, women, and old men, full of innocent Japanese at the center of the city of 350,000 in population. Meaning perhaps Operation Downfall would have had a larger number of deaths, but it would have attacked the military bases and not defenseless people.
Terrible effects that the bombs caused were radiation damage, including different types of cancers, and people were going blind and having their skin peeling off, as cited from atomic archives of blood.
Dropping the bomb may have led to radiation poisoning, but it also led to medical research. The chemicals emitting from the gamma rays can provide a diagnostic information that helped with the chemotherapy with helping with cancer.
I'd like to bring up the point of racism. During and after World War II, 33,000 Japanese served in the U.S. military. However, many celebrities actively participated in racism
wasn't only being racist toward Japan. Japan is also being racist toward the U.S. because they started the propaganda campaign called the Glorious Death of 100 Million, which meant that every single Japanese man, woman, and child would die for the emperor. And during the Battle of Okinawa, Japanese officers ordered civilians unable to fight to commit suicide rather than fall into American hands, according to World War II.
Any topic that I would like to address is this was a huge discovery for science, not only for medicine, but because, and I quote from history.com, the United States was the only nation to use atomic weaponry during wartime. This shows that we made a huge breakthrough in science because we were the first to build such a weapon at this time.
Yes, that was great science and also legal research, but there are 56 million gallons of highly radioactive liquid left that was used to create the atomic bombs used in World War II.
Thank you guys for listening to our debate. Me and my partner Stephanie overall think that the bomb should have been dropped, and because it wouldn't have killed as many lives as that would have been lost if we would have gone through with Operation Downfall. Would you have done anything different if you were in Truman's slot?
Thank you all for being here and listening to our debate about the atomic bombs being dropped in World War II. In conclusion, Amanda, the dropping the bomb is not necessary.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Surreal, and my teammates are Bella and Rachel. We believe the atomic bomb was absolutely necessary because it helped end World War II and was a huge accomplishment for scientists.
Good afternoon. This is Elizabeth, and I'm Elizabeth. This is Vanessa, and I'm Elizabeth. And we're arguing the coincided dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. America had already done enough damage to Japan, and there was an unnecessary amount of death and destruction from the radiation.
The Japanese were merciless and brutal in the Bataan Death March. According to Britannica.com, on August 7, 1942, the Japanese captured 60,000 Filipinos and 10,000 Americans and took them as POW. They beat them insenselessly and sometimes just to make them move faster or for sport. This could have happened if the atomic bomb has not been set off.
Although the Bataan Death March was brutal, America also mistreated Japanese and Japanese-American citizens by forcing these innocent people into internment camps. According to the HuffingtonPost.com, President Franklin D. Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066 paved the way for over 110,000 Japanese Americans to be forced from their homes and imprisoned behind barbed wires during the war.
To bring up a different point, the bomb was not necessary because, according to HistoryOnTheNet.com, the reason why Japan would never surrender is because Japan wanted to keep their emperor. Japan worshipped their emperor and believed he was part God. To go along with that, America never said Japan could keep their emperor. If America was more specific in the message for the Japanese, Japan would have surrendered.
While you are right, Japan was not a country that was known to surrender very easily. According to Atlantic.com, if America had just invaded, 1.7 million lives would be gone, both on the Japanese and American side. How is this a better option? It wasn't necessary to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki because America had already firebombed Tokyo, incinerating a bustling city filled with innocent women, children, and other civilians, leaving them to burn. According to Britannica.com, often cited as the most destructive act of war in history, the firebombings of Tokyo was even more destructive than the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
I get what you're saying about firebombing, however, according to Hiroshima, turned up more than 100,000 people were dead, a million were homeless. This demonstrates how the Japanese forces thousands of dead and fighting. They left us with no choice but to drop them.
According to NHDweekly.com, Japanese planes had attacked all 8 of the U.S. carriers, sinking half of them. And in the aftermath of Pearl Harbor,
There were a total of 2,402 Americans killed and 1,282 wounded. It was only fair that we dropped the bomb.
Yes, but do you realize that the atomic bomb killed an unnecessary amount of people? 200,000 people died, innocent people lost their lives. Not only did soldiers die, but many civilians died as well. Children and mothers with their burning skin.
The dropping of the atomic bomb was the necessary during World War II. It prevented war deaths of both Japan and America. If we hadn't dropped the bomb, what would our nation be like today? Would it be better or would it be worse?
To conclude, the dropping of the atomic bomb was not necessary to do during World War II. Americans killed lots of innocent civilians. Why was there a need to drop the atomic bomb in the first place when originally the bomb was not supposed to be used offensively? Thank you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Docents and worthy opponents. I would like to thank Ms. Rivera, Ms. Blockus for helping us prepare for these debates, and I'd also like to thank the docents here today for giving us the tour and just giving us all the information about this site. My name is Tristan, and this is my partner Isaac Geisler, and we are here today because we believe the dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was necessary so less casualties would occur. And we believe that the making of the atomic bombs was important in many scientific discoveries.
Good afternoon, audience, chair peoples, B-Reactor, and opposition. We, the opposing side, believe that the bombs were not necessary. I'm Nolan, and this is Casey. As said by President Eisenhower, I was against it on 2 counts. First, the Japanese were ready to surrender, and it wasn't necessary to hit them with the awful thing. Second, I hated to see our country be the first to use such a terrible weapon.
To begin, it was necessary to drop the atomic bombs because of Japan's strategy of Ketsugo, where they would fight for their homeland until no Japanese remained. Therefore, the atomic bombs were necessary to scare the Japanese into surrendering. The amount of casualties that would have been lost was up to 4 million for America and 10 million for Japan, according to personnel at the Navy Department of the History Learning Center. These are the reasons President Truman chose to drop the atomic bombs. It saved lives on both sides.
As to refute your point, the Japanese never actually refused to surrender, but instead went to Russia for clarification as to the formation of their government, and later to America. This is, according to Whitcock's book, the decision to drop the atomic bomb. This shows that Japan was willing to surrender if they were able to keep their emperor and knew what the government was to be like.
Thank you, Noah. One reason why the dropping of the atomic bombs was unnecessary was that there were other alternatives. According to HistoryOnNet.com, if representatives of the Japanese government, military, and scientific community could have seen the bombs, it might have been enough to convince them of the foolishness of continued resistance. This shows that there could have been less casualties if they used other alternatives.
Japanese actually wouldn't have surrendered because of what Tristan previously stated about Ketsugo. They would also continue killing civilians of China and Indonesia that were currently under Japanese occupation. This adds about 1 million to the death toll. Rumors of negotiations with Japan were, according to an SBS survey, and actually not true because they had their own reasons and wanted to preserve the U.S. Air Force after the war and needed to make the atomic bomb seem like a terrible weapon. This is in accordance to abc.net, theatlantic.com, and thediplomat.com.
Another reason the atomic bombs were so bad is because of all the nuclear waste that was produced. It was 2.8 million tons, or 56 million gallons of nuclear waste, not to mention all the waste that isn't as bad that was dumped into water and directly into the ground. This is accordance to Hanford.gov. This shows just how little was known about what nuclear waste does to the environment, and that they had no idea how many problems they were causing in the long run.
People at the vitrification plant are working on a way to safely dispose of the nuclear waste, such as turning it into glass. This project has provided 2,800 jobs and will offer 300 job openings. The waste will no longer expel radiation out of the environment as glass. This will make the radiation so that it is not a problem. This is according to the Tri-City Herald.com.
I think one reason why the construction of the bombs was bad was that lots of workers during the Manhattan Project got radiation poisoning. According to the New York Times, after decades of denials, the government is conceding that since the dawn of the atomic age, workers making nuclear weapons have been exposed to radiation and chemicals that have produced cancer and blood death. This shows that it was very dangerous to work on the bombs back then.
To rebuttal, Casey, how many deaths were caused by the construction of the two atomic bombs?
The answer is 62 by the Atomic Heritage Foundation for both Hanford and Oak Ridge.
But 54 of these deaths were from construction. Plus, compared to private companies, injury rates are 62% lower. Death rates were low even from radiation. My next point. The atomic bomb brought many scientific and medical advancements, and many jobs. Like President Truman said, employment during construction numbered 125,000 and over 65,000 individuals are even now engaged in operating plants. This means that there were 109,000 jobs because of the plants alone. Princeton University also stated that the atomic bombs help make treatments for cancer, along as diagnostic tests used in medicine. As you can see, the atomic bombs brought more than just destruction. It brought important discoveries and jobs for many.
Again, I am Isaac, and this is Tristan, and we would again like to thank the docents and audience for listening to our debate. I think everyone, no matter what topic or side you are on, should always consider what the other side has to say. As you can see, we have done so and still firmly believe that dropping the atomic bombs on Japan was a good idea. We hope that you understand that many millions more would have died both in war and because cures would not have been invented for people from then on. We ask you, would you have killed millions more just because you didn't want to use a very powerful bomb?
Thank you everyone for attending our debate. Hopefully today we convinced you that we didn't need to drop the atomic bombs. I'm Casey, and thanks for listening.
Good afternoon. Thank
no side who believe that the bombs of Nagasaki and Hiroshima were necessary.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for watching our debate. My name is Morgan, and this is Mansley. We are on the con side and believe that it was not necessary to drop the bomb.
Our first point that we'd like to bring up is whether or not it was necessary to drop the bomb. The U.S. suffered major casualties in the Pacific Theater, and I would like to bring up one specific battle. It is the Battle of Okinawa. 4,900 U.S. soldiers lost their lives that day, and 4,800 of them were also casualties as well. And 368 ships were damaged, and 36 ships were destroyed. And the Japanese, with kamikaze pilots, would hit the ships at over 500 miles an hour. A kamikaze pilot is a Japanese aircraft that is loaded with explosives that would deliberately crash into an enemy target.
We think that it was unnecessary to drop the bombs. The U.S. could have dropped the bombs somewhere where it wouldn't hurt anybody, to show Japan what we could do. Going off of what Ansley said, if they dropped the bomb in the ocean near Japan, then it could have demonstrated the power and abilities of the bomb without hurting or killing any of the innocent civilians, such as children and women.
We as the pro side disagree with that. Going off of what Gabe said, I'm going to add another battle, the Battle of Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima was one of the worst battles during World War II because there were 26,000 wounded U.S. soldiers and 6,000 U.S. soldiers dead.
Our next point is on all the casualties because of the bomb. There were approximately 210,000 deaths from the bombs. Little kids had to suffer the feeling of their skin melting off before finally dying. People felt their skin burning, and they tried to jump into water only to realize that it was boiling. If they survived all of that, they would usually die from radiation poisoning. People who got radiation would at some point get a cancer.
Casualties is a good point. Compared to the 210,000 people dying from the atomic bomb, the alternative was Operation Downfall. That would have caused an extremely high 5 times as much casualties. According to nationalistinterest.org, it was estimated that if we followed through with Operation Downfall, it would have cost 1 million plus casualties.
Going off of what Ethan had said, I'm going to talk about the total casualties from the Bataan Death March. From the Bataan Death March, there were 10,000 POWs killed by Japan, also a total of 111,606 U.S. military dead or missing. Going off of Operation Downfall, there was a backup plan that Japan had called Ketsugo, and what Ketsugo was is they had rigged a bunch of tunnels with explosives, and they would send children into those tunnels and suicide themselves as killing multiple of our U.S. military. Also, the firebombs killed more Japanese in one night than the atomic bombs combined.
For Ketsugo, there was, going with what Ansley said, for Ketsugo, the bomb killed many children as well as adults. Also, it was an estimation for how many people could have died if we followed through with Operation Downfall, because that there could have been a lot less deaths than estimated. Also, they could have surrendered if we tried to go with a naval blockade, because that would only stop people from going in and out. Yes, they probably would eventually run low on food, but that could have possibly caused them to surrender earlier.
dropping the atomic bomb was the best possible choice due to the fact of the huge amount of casualties before we dropped the bomb and the critical amount of lives we spared by dropping the atomic bomb instead.
Dropping the bomb on arms wasn't necessary. The amount of casualties of innocent civilians was too great. Thank you all for listening this afternoon.
Hello, our names are Alex and Aaron. Thank you, B-Reactor National Park, for hosting this debate. The events of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan were an important chapter in world history. The actions taken on those fateful days have been met with great dispute. However, were necessary to stop the war and provide a deterrent for any future aggressions. We look forward to debating this topic. I yield the floor to the opposition.
Hello. First of all, I'm going to say thank you to the B-Reactor for having us here, and especially in this room. It's quite nice. My name is Haley, this is Renee, and this is Ricardo. We're on the con side of the bomb. We believe that the bomb shouldn't have been dropped because it was illegal and it had too many lasting effects to be worth it.
The Japanese mentality for the war was called Bereshita, the way of the warrior. It means that they would fight no matter what the consequences were, how many lives were lost in the process. The Japanese kamikaze pilots, young men, sometimes with families, were sent in with aircraft fit with explosives and told to ram themselves into a specific target, killing themselves in the process, all for the glory and honor of Japan. According to CNN, the combined deaths of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were 140,000. Compare that to the millions more lives that would have been lost if the war had continued. I would not be here if not for the second bomb dropped on Japan, as my great-grandfather was scheduled to fly bombing runs from the island of Tinian a week after the second bomb was dropped. I am but one example of so many lives that were made possible by the immediate conclusion to the war with Japan. The nuclear bomb was the right decision, as it ended the war with Japan and saved so many American and Japanese lives.
Yes, I agree that dropping the bomb saved many American lives, although there were other options than dropping the bomb. Even if studies show that the bomb saved more lives, we don't know for sure if more lives could have been saved with Operation Downfall.
The scientists working on the bombs, even before the research was started, knew how much damage this chemical reaction would cause. They even tried to tell the government not to use it. In the Einstein letter in 1939 to FDR, a single bomb of this type, carried by a boat and exploded in a port, might very well destroy the whole port together with some of the surrounding territory.
It is true that we did know how much destruction it would cause, and we figured that out by the Trinity test as well. But our president at the time, Truman,
another point I'd like to bring up is the effects of racism against the Japanese. According to the article, The Effects of Racism During World War II, the American public and government largely regarded the Japanese as enemy aliens after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. They feared that the Eastern United would join forces with their country of origin. This shows that America as a whole was extremely racist towards the Japanese.
we did put the Japanese down. There was racism, we're not denying that, but we did raise them up after the war. We helped them rebuild. In an article from The Guardian, it says, U.S. soldiers arrived in Hiroshima in 1946. They were vital to the flow of emergency supplies. We're friends now. We're good political allies with them. In an article from ThoughtCo, it says the U.S. and Japan were able to forge a strong post-war diplomatic alliance. We trade things now, like technology, car, anime, even little teenagers like their anime. And so even though there was racism, we were able to overcome that, and now we help each other out when we most need it.
It is estimated that over 25 million Asians had already been killed by the Japanese.
Who knows when that would have stopped? The bomb dropped in Hiroshima was supposed to stop the war. However, as Eldridge Colby of the National Interest points out, the Emperor of Japan, Hirohito, was so passionate about winning, it took the second bomb for him to realize that he had lost. The nuclear bomb achieved its single objective of stopping the war and saved so many lives
saved as many lives as possible. It also serves as a nuclear deterrent for anyone thinking of such actions again.
Even with the Japanese being as brutal as they were fighting against the U.S. and the USSR, the bomb caused no problems in solving. The bomb killed more Japanese. The bomb killed. Was it worth it? The Japanese lives to save American lives. It also caused long-lasting effects on people who survived.
The atomic bombs that were manufactured here in the United States but were dropped in Japan were necessary to end the Second World War and also the thousands of lives that could have been lost if we had not used this newfound nuclear technology. We would like to thank you for taking your time to listen to our debate and considering both sides of the discussion.
In conclusion, Haley, Ricardo, and I believe that the United States should not have dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. The amount of damage caused by the bombs is catastrophic, especially the amount of lives lost. There are more moral and ethical options that we could have used instead of dropping the bombs. I leave you, the audience, with this question. Where do your morals lie?
And thank you for being here and judging us. We are pro-bomb because we believe it was necessary, and we even have veterans that say that the Japan wouldn't have stopped until the death.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here for the debate. And we believe that Japan would have surrendered even if the atomic bombs hadn't been dropped and even if Russia hadn't joined the war.
My first point that I want to bring up is the bombing on Pearl Harbor. Japan had dropped bombs on Pearl Harbor, and my source, visitpearlharbor.org, stated that the Japanese killed 2,403 people and wounded 1,143. We shouldn't just sit back and watch thousands of our people die and suffer. What else are we supposed to do?
Japan did do a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. However, we did not have to drop the atomic bomb. After that, the U.S. put Japanese Americans into internment camps for no reason. Some of those Japanese Americans heroically fought with the U.S. Army.
The death count was really high. There was unnecessary deaths. There were families that were struggling and tried to get their things for the family. And the U.S. took their lives and their children away from them in just a snap of a second.
I understand that there were a lot of deaths due to the atomic bombs, but Japan wouldn't have stopped if they were dropped. One of the Japanese veterans from World War II said, "After the first bomb was dropped, we were going to keep going. We didn't think that America had anything like the atomic bomb. If it wasn't for the second bomb, we would have kept going until everyone and anyone was wiped out. This proves that the Japanese didn't care who died as long as they won."
Moving on to our next point. When the U.S. dropped the nuclear bomb, radiation spread throughout Hiroshima. Those people who got radiation developed long-term effects including thyroid, breast, lung, and other cancers at higher than normal rates. Also, children that got exposed to radiation while their mothers are more likely to get cancer even to this day.
I understand your point, Oscar, but however, I know that radiation is really bad for human health. The cancers that can be cured and then can be treated with earlier technology. According to the article, small amounts of radiation could be good for you. It states genetic repair and tissue damage can be prevented. This is also really beneficial.
How can you explain the Baton Death March? It happened April 9, 1942, and it was from Maniveles to San Fernando. And according to History.com, Filipinos and Americans were forced to march, and thousands have died of brutality, starvation, and they were beaten to death.
From mid-January to April 9th, 1942, Filipino Americans fought on the peninsula. 64,000 Filipinos and 12,000 Americans became prisoners, she said. And even though they were beat, they tried their hardest to protect each other but we had 7,000 die, and that would have affected their family and affected how the whole American side looked.
In conclusion, we still stand our ground on the fact that the atomic bombs should have been dropped. Miriam, Giselle, and I strongly believe that the bombs are necessary due to the fact that Japan attacked us first, killed thousands of innocent people, and without the atomic bombs, Japan wouldn't have stopped. They would have fought until everyone was dead.
I, Oscar, and my teammate Cisco still believe that the U.S. should have not dropped the bomb on innocent people.
Good afternoon, audience and parents. I am Emily, and this is my partner, Ali. We believe that the atomic bomb was necessary to end the war because it was beneficial for the studies of science and medicine of the future. Thank you for your attention. Hi, my name is Brianna, and I would like to thank my opponents in the audience too for being here today. I am here to inform you that the atomic bomb should not have been dropped. We hope you joined the increasing rate of anti-bomb people in America.
Our first theme is whether or not it was necessary to drop the bombs. We, as the pro side, believe that dropping the atomic bombs on Japan was necessary because of their belief in the Bushido Code. Because of it, they would fight to the deaths. For example, it was a kamikaze pilot's task to crash into Allied ships and kill as many sailors as possible. The commander of Japan's first air fleet, Takajiro Onishi, had this idea because it was premised on the belief that Japan would never surrender. He said, "What greater glory can there be for a warrior than to give his life for emperor and country?" The Japanese would never surrender. They would fight till the last person. By dropping the bomb, civilian lives were saved.
A point that I would like to introduce is that dropping the bomb could have been racially motivated. On historyonthenet.com, it states, anti-Japanese imagery was everywhere, in Bugs Bunny cartoons, popular music, postcards, children's toys, magazine advertisements, and in a wide array of novelty items, ranging from ashtrays to Jap hunting license buttons. This shows the severity of racism during the time, made dropping the bomb an easier decision for America. It was not racist, it was war. They killed 2,403 Americans in Pearl Harbor, and more than 11,500 American soldiers died in the Japanese confinement camps. There was no other choice except an invasion, and other options that would be more bloodier and kill more Japanese. If we didn't drop the bomb, the war would have been going on longer, and more blood would have been shed. Even though it could have helped for medical reasons, it also
this bomb was very necessary for the future of science and medicine. Because if we wouldn't have dropped it, we wouldn't have learned about all the effects radiation has on humans. For example, chemotherapy. It uses radiation to treat cancer cells by killing or weakening the cancer cells. Although it might kill other cells, like the hair cells, it will still be good for the cancer patient. Without the bomb, we possibly wouldn't have such good technology and information.
Even though it could have helped for medical reasons, it also caused more medical problems to the people that are still working at Hanford decades later. On the website hanford.gov, it states, crews responsible for site cleanup are dealing with several different kinds of waste in a number of different forms, with many of the waste being potentially harmful to people and the environment. This proves that the bomb still affects families and the environment today, therefore the bomb was used the wrong way.
Maybe the bomb was used the wrong way, but if America didn't drop the bombs, the war would have been prolonged with deaths from both sides. We would have to go with Operation Downfall, a plan that would add 10 million to the war's 50 million body count. Also, if the bomb wasn't made for destruction, what was it made for? Albert Einstein sent a letter to the US saying, a single bomb of this type, carried by a boat and exploded in a port, might very well destroy the whole port together with some of the surrounding territory. Einstein encouraged the construction of the bombs because he knew that they would be useful for their powers of destruction. To conclude, my partner and I believe that dropping Little Boy and Fat Man on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was tragic, but saved lives on both sides, averted the need for land invasion, and ended the war. Therefore, it was the best option. Thank you all for allowing Delta High School to debate in the B-Reactor today.
Thank you everyone for letting Delta High School come here to debate the atomic bomb. Hopefully I have shown you that dropping the atomic bomb was unnecessary and there were plenty of other options that didn't cause harm for multiple generations. As Eisenhower once said, against the dark background of the atomic bomb, the United States does not wish merely to present strength, but also the desire and the hope for peace.
Good afternoon, my name is Miguel and this is my partner Jason. We are the affirmative team. I would like to thank you all for having us here today to listen to our debate. We, the affirmative side, believe using the atomic bomb on Japan was the correct decision that led to a quick end to the war.
Good afternoon, everyone. Me and my debate partner Emily will be debating the con side of the argument. The dropping of both atomic bombs was disapproved by many scientists, was not necessary for the victory of the war, and was incredibly cruel.
The first point I would like to bring up is how scientists encouraged the U.S. to make the bombs. Leo Szilard was a physicist who was concerned about the discovery of nuclear fission in Germany. He wrote a letter to Franklin D. Roosevelt to convince him to start making bombs. That letter was signed by Albert Einstein, who agreed. Finally, on October 9, 1941, Franklin D. Roosevelt approved productions of bombs.
While Albert Einstein and many other scientists supported the development of nuclear weapons, they supported it for one major reason. They thought Germany would get there first, and they needed the ability to respond in kind. The Ziller petition, a petition from the scientists asking the president to not drop the bomb, has the following to say. Until recently, we have had to fear that the United States might be attacked by atomic bombs during this war, and that her only defense might be a counterattack by the same means. Today, with the defeat of Germany, this danger is averted.
I want to go back to what Miguel said with Albert Einstein signing the bomb letter to start working on the bomb. That the one other scientist, Slizzer, wrote. I don't think that he would have signed it. Like, if he didn't want us to use it, like, why make it in defense? Because they would have made it first, but if they had attacked it to bomb them, even though it might not have been used how he wanted it, it was still used because he wanted it to be made.
The dropping of the atomic bomb was unnecessary. Many people in the military at the time even thought it was folly. Among these people was the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson. This is what he had to say to the President on the subject of the bomb. First, on the basis of my belief that Japan was already defeated and that dropping the bomb was completely unnecessary, and the report goes on.
Maybe just because that person had said that, President Truman was warned that if we attacked Japan, then we would have casualties upon us because they would attack back. So he ordered that we make a weapon of mass destruction, which was the atomic bomb, to end the war. My source is history.com.
A new point I'm going to talk about is how the people back then were frightened. On the morning of December 7, 1941, the Japanese forces surprise attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. According to History.com, this tragic event resulted in 2,040 American people losing their lives and 1,200 people wounded.
Good afternoon, I'm Manny, this is Edgar, and we believe that dropping the bombs was necessary. Would you want the American POWs to be brutally enslaved by Japan?
Hi, I'm Rory, and this is my partner Hannah. We are the con side of this debate. Did we need to drop an atomic bomb on an incredibly weakened country on the verge of surrender and cause unnecessary bloodshed?
Little boy and fat man helped Japan to surrender, or convinced Japan to surrender. According to History.com, a second US atomic bomb was dropped on the Japanese coastal city of Nagasaki. The bombs bombarded Japan, causing them to give up.
Japan was already weakened. The bombs were overkill. Even Secretary of War Henry Louis Stimson was not sure the bombs were needed to reduce the need for an invasion. Japan had no allies. Its navy was almost destroyed. Its islands were under a naval blockade, and its cities were undergoing concentrated air attacks.
Another reason as to why dropping the bomb was unnecessary is because of the firebombs the U.S. dropped in Tokyo. According to ABC.net, the firebombs killed about 100,000 civilians and wiped out about half the city. Japan's capital was already severely weakened, and they would not have been able to recover to their previous status before the war was done.
Well, I respectfully disagree, but however, it was necessary because, according to Baltimore.com, when the bomb was dropped, Japan was forced to release American POWs, saving thousands of American lives.
Another point I'd like to bring up is the U.S. could have shown the power of the atomic bombs to Japan. Jeffrey from Quartz.com says, Tokyo Bay would have been the ideal place to display the bomb's power. A large open area, the bay was close to Japan's neighbors. This was the best alternative to dropping the bomb on civilian targets.
Well, it is true they could have shown the power of the bombs. However, according to AtomicHeritage.org, the LeMay leaflets were distributed before the bombing of Hiroshima as a warning.
Another point I'd like to bring up is that targeting Hiroshima was necessary. According to bbc.co.uk, it was also an important military base, which clears up part of the reasoning that it was targeted.
However, there were many civilians living in Hiroshima that died when the bomb dropped. bbc.co.uk also states, as well as residents of Hiroshima, victims include Koreans who had been forced to Japan as laborers and American POWs who were imprisoned in Hiroshima. There was a lot of unnecessary bloodshed caused by the atomic bomb.
Now, time for our conclusion. Manning and I believe the bombs were necessary. Like what Harry Truman asked, what would you do to prevent a third world war?
In conclusion, Rory and I believe that dropping the atomic bombs was unnecessary. Would you have dropped the bombs, regardless of how many people might be killed?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Bradley, and this is Brianna. And we were troubled. The reason we did not go through with downfall is that it saved lives from 1.7 million to 4 million, and dropping the bomb only took 1/8 of the lives that could have been lost.
Good afternoon, I am Jack Running. This is my partner, Oscar. We believe that the bomb should not have been dropped, and we would like to open our debate with a quote. Thus, a nation which sets the precedent of using these newly liberated forces of nature for purposes of destruction may have to bear the responsibility of opening a door to destruction on an unimaginable scale.
We would like to start off with the topic of why the bomb should have been dropped because of the scientific discoveries it brought. An example of this is in an article written by Princeton University. It states, some of the discoveries made by creating the bomb are treatments for cancer, especially cobalt-60, multiple diagnostic tests, and the understanding of the metabolic pathways.
I understand that the bomb brought medical advancements, but think about what the survivors had to suffer through. For example, I read an article from ScienceDaily.com that said survivors either had an increased risk of cancer or their lifespan was decreased by about 1.3 years. Imagine how unfair it must be for these people, knowing that a year of their life is literally taken away from them.
The dropping of the bombs was not for winning the war. It was to scare the Russians. According to the Washington Post, other considerations, especially the new weapon's impact on social relations with the Soviet Union, were taken into consideration when dropping the atomic bombs. This shows the true intention of the bombs was not really to end the Second World War, but to kick off the Cold War.
Yes, it did scare the Russians, and yes, that was the plan to start the Cold War. But if we had attacked by foot, there would have been more bloodshed, and there would have been useless bloodshed. How would you remember that?
Furthermore, I would like to talk about the Battle of Okinawa. The Battle of Okinawa had been the most brutal of the Pacific theater. More than 150,000 Japanese, many of them civilians, were killed during the battle. That was a quote from History.net. The Battle of Okinawa wasn't the only one like it, including the Battle of Iwo Jima and many more. Japan suffered a lot from those battles, and the U.S. abused their power by dropping the nuke. Japan would have surrendered with or without the bombs.
I disagree with your statement on that Japan would have just surrendered because the
firebombing of Japan produced more deaths than the dropping of the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But there was still no surrender. The Japanese had a plan, and that was to combine all forces of the Japanese Army, Navy, and Air Force, and the plan was one of no surrender, to be carried out through days and night until the destruction or surrender of America.
My last point is, the effect from the bomb was way less tragic than it would have been if we went through with Operation Downfall. But we chose to go with the bomb, which it did. An article from Time.com said the Operation Downfall was way too hard to go through with, and kept Japan still in contact today.
This is actually an interesting topic. The deaths from Operation Downfall would not have been as severe as these military sources have outlined. According to commondreams.org, this was actually historical revisionism from Truman himself in an effort to get the heat off of him when he dropped the bombs on Japan.
In conclusion, the bombs were necessary because it led to multiple scientific breakthroughs still used today. Dropping the bomb prevented thousands of deaths from happening and ended a war that may have continued for months or even years.
Overall, dropping the nukes on Nagasaki and Hiroshima was a tragedy that could have been prevented. Sure, it may have ended the war, but at the expense of an entire country falling and almost ceasing to exist. How does anything Japan did to the U.S. justify how the U.S. left Japan?
According to J. Robert Oppenheimer, the atomic bomb made the prospect of future war unendurable. It has led us up those last few steps to the mountain pass, and beyond, there is a different country. Hello, my name is Roland, and in the past weeks, my partner Jada and I have studied the history of and around the atomic bombs, and we agree with the dropping.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Antonio Martinez, and this is my partner Janie Burks. Today, we are going to talk about why the bombs were necessary to drop and how many civilian lives were lost.
The first topic addressed in this debate is the post-war cleanup and rebuilding. In the aftermath of the war, the U.S. was committed to rebuilding both itself and Japan. The Library of Congress and LUN-EDU talk of post-war economic moves that led to Japan and the U.S. becoming world powers.
One of the reasons the Hanford site is going to take 70 or more years to clean up is because the waste was just disposed in the surrounding area. The Tri-City Herald stated that it would take approximately $107.7 billion to clean up.
Continuing to what my partner said, there are still tons of cleanup at the Hanford site. Vernica.com states a liquid waste is stored on site in 177 underground tanks, the largest of which is 1 million gallons in capacity. There is about 68 million gallons of nuclear waste, and plutonium's half-life is 24,000 years. The Hanford site could still be in use for generations to come.
After the bombs were dropped, the experiments were continued. More and more people got jobs at Hanford. Employment levels went up, and less people would be on the streets begging. To this day, people are still getting hired to work on the cleanup here. Without the bombs, the Tri-Cities would be a whole lot smaller, and a good chunk of us wouldn't even be here in the first place.
Our last point is how many civilians died of the bombs. American sources such as the journal.ie will say that 70 to 80,000 people died in the Hiroshima bomb. But Japanese websites we found, such as Asahi.com, stated that approximately 140,000 died within the first month. That is not including the amount of people that went missing afterwards.
While all those people did pass from, all those Japanese people did pass, we haven't taken into consideration how many the Japanese have taken. At the time, the Japanese were doing many heartless acts. In just one event, the rape of Nanking, or the Nanking Massacre, they proved how cruel they could be. They raped and killed women ages 8 to 70. If the Japanese had succeeded in conquering China, they would have kept treating the Chinese this way. In Japan, they were taught to fight to the death with no mercy at all.
Adding on to that point, the death estimates from the bombs may have been a staggering 200,000 plus, but the deaths from Operation Downfall only multiplied the casualties. An estimated 1 million Americans and 10 million Japanese would have lost their lives, according to personnel at the Navy Department from the historyoflearningsite.co.uk.
Yes. However, sadly, many people were killed in Nagasaki after the atomic bomb was dropped. A website from Japan named historyhit.com says that about 80,000 people died from the atomic bomb. Many were injured and died days after the bomb. Many say yes, it helped us find a treatment for cancer, but it also gave people cancer to begin with.
Concluding what my partner and I were saying, the dropping of the atomic bombs was not a bad alternative. It ended the war that probably would have been going on for plenty more years afterwards if they weren't dropped, and had many benefits come afterwards. Thank you for coming and listening to us. But before we go, I have a question for you. Would you rather lose the lives of 200,000 or have the total annihilation of millions?
In closing, we would like you to think of all the horrible things the atomic bomb did to families and still has an impact on families today. Just as Herbert Hoover said, the use of the atomic bomb with its indiscriminate killing of women and children revolts my soul. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice afternoon.